But wow, we are sitting here the morning after the night before. I'm not sure if we've recovered from PSG's battering of Real Madrid. David, how do you see that match?
Yeah, it was just awesome from PSG, and myself and Marcus Speller did Ramble Reacts last night, and we were in agreement on it was just a continuation of how PSG finished that Champions League final. And then this was despite the Club World Cup, obviously, carrying on, sapping you to more games, the heat involved as well. But PSG just continued on from that Champions League game and played with such just a brilliant, expansive, positive nature. Always going to come out of the blocks at you. They did that brilliantly. I think Real Madrid played into their hands, considerably so, absolutely. But I think we have to acknowledge just where PSG are right now on the scale of football. And I think they're head and shoulders above everybody else. They're the team to catch on the global scale.
I think that's it. This was always billed as PSG versus Mbappé, of course, with everything that's gone on between them, with everything legally that's still going on between them, even though Mbappe's tried to take that sting out of the conversation and he showed himself very publicly to be very happy for his former teammates who won the Champions League. And he's always said, the issue that he's got is with the people who run the club rather than the club itself, or rather than the supporters, rather than the players. A lot of him he's still very good mates with, including Moussa Dembélé, of course, who's going to beat him to the Ballon d'Or.
And who he's backed as well.
Yeah.
Mbappé said, if I could pick, Dembélé gets it.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that the fact that it's meant to be that, and there are reasons that it doesn't turn out to be that. So obviously Mbappé has that severe food poisoning, which means this is the first game he starts of the tournament, and it really looks like it. But having said that, I think the thing that has really stood out about PSG in this competition, I know you're talking about it being a continuation of the way last season ended. Luis Enrique, I think, since the Champions League final, has emerged as a superstar. Perhaps really more so than any iconic coach since Mourinho in charge of Porto in 2004 or Inter in 2010. In that, of course, they do have a lot of great players, PSG, and they've assembled an absolutely fantastic team. But it's firstly, it's not a superstar-based team. And secondly, it's very much in the image of the coach, which is what he wants, which is what he's all about. He is about that, everyone making a collective effort. And I think that has really helped them in this season that never ends. Because essentially, I think you've seen other teams look tired, irritable, burnt out into their opponent in the Champions League final, being an obvious example of that, of course. But I think the way that he's managed the team, and I don't just mean coach the team, but manage the team in this tournament has been brilliant. And he said afterwards, he was asked about how great this performance was. And he said, well, yeah, obviously it's great to beat such a great opponent so well. But really, this was about delivering us in the best possible condition to compete in the final at the weekend. And that's not something that you expect someone to talk about directly after this, is it? And I think the way he's managed the physical conditions of the players, the way he's rotated, the fact that, we talked about Dembélé and Mbappé. Dembélé has been managed probably more carefully than he needed to be so far,
given his injury history.
But I think it's proved to be very sensible.
Really, really smart. And, it was the way the position that Dembélé is in right now, literally the position he plays in the team, but also just as a player right now and his status. He's just putting fear into defenders, and Real Madrid were petrified of that PSG press, which Dembélé was, very much spearheading.
It's weird for that second goal. It's not the pressing that Dembélé does. It's the pressing that Rudiger thinks he's about to do that gets in his head, isn't it?
And that's the fear. Yeah. That's coming. And without Huijsen, who didn't play for Real Madrid lacked that player who can spin a pass past that attack into midfield and get things going. It's the reason why Real Madrid was swarmed. They just simply couldn't get out because they didn't have somebody who was capable enough on the ball.
I think that's it. Like last couple of games, they've looked like a new Real Madrid, Xabi Alonso's Real Madrid. And last night, they looked more like last season Real Madrid. That was the problem, really, wasn't it?
Absolutely. For me, it looked like Ancelotti was still on the bench yesterday, and that is concerning. And I think that's the big worry that they have here. But yeah, just going back to what Andy's saying about Luis Enrique as well, and just the freshness of PSG, I wonder if winning that Champions League has kind of taken them over a little hill and given them a renewed hunger. And they said, like, look, this is the status where we are right now. We're the best. We're the best in Europe. And you must suddenly get that hunger go through. I want to win more. I want more. I want this to keep going. I want to dominate. And that is the feeling that is clearly at PSG right now, that they said, it doesn't matter who you put in front of us. It doesn't matter what tournament it is. We want to win that. They've got Spurs next in the Super Cup. They'll want to win that as well. They want to be dominant, and that's the sign of a great team. And it's funnily enough, it's what Florentino Perez has always put in Real Madrid. No matter what it is, we want to win, and we want to win well. We're Real Madrid, and obviously PSG are kind of now like, we're PSG. We want to win everything.
It goes without saying, surely, Andy, that Chelsea will be looking at that performance against Madrid last night and thinking, we've got a lot to be concerned about. Surely.
Yeah, and I think they're right to. And I don't think it's particular to Chelsea. I think it would be any team that was playing them would be thinking, how are we going to win this? And, few teams have that aura. Look, I'm a bit wary of putting the cart before the horse because you and I have spoken about this, Dotun, that so many times you've seen a team win the Champions League in convincing fashion and thought this team is going to dominate the Champions League for years to come. Following up on the Champions League and winning it again has only been done once in the Champions League era for a reason. It's bloody difficult. It's really, really difficult. And you can look at a team and think, it's perfect. What do I do to it? Let's not do anything to it. And then when you haven't done anything to it, you realise 6 months later that you probably should have done. You probably should have evolved it a little bit. Remember, after Real Madrid won the final in 2024 at Wembley, of course, it wasn't their most convincing performance in the final, but we got there and we got to the other side of that and we thought, how could they improve? Well, we could all think of a million ways they could have improved now, but we couldn't at the time, could we?
Just out of interest, and I reckon a lot of people will want to know this as well. There's one position or one area at PSG where you'd say, maybe they do need somebody in, something they could potentially improve, or maybe even a bit of depth. Is there a particular position or area what you would say they need to sign somebody in?
I still think goalkeeper, which may sound weird after the season that Donnarumma's had, but his future is uncertain, and Luis Enrique wants someone who's adept with his feet, or more adept with his feet, I think it's fair to say. I feel like they're quite reliant on William Pacho, who's been their best defender this season. And that'll be the interesting thing. You're talking about the final with Chelsea, Dotun. No Luka Hernandez, okay, fair enough. But no William Pacho. Both of those have gone home to France. Pacho, was impeccable last season. Yeah. Absolutely impeccable. There's a sense that Marquinhos will probably move on after this season. I don't think Beraldo's it. So I think they need at least one more centre back. We're presuming that Kimpembe doesn't get back to his previous level.
Which is a shame because he was so good when I loved Kimpembe watching.
Yeah, he was great, and he was an academy product, which was really, really important to them and their sense of self. I think they're going to stick with Gonzalo Ramos, but maybe in due course they move to another centre forward for another option. The front three, stroke four, we know what it is, and Gonzalo Ramos isn't one of those four, is he? It's Doué, Kvaratskhelia, Dembélé, and Barcola who make up that front three in whatever combination. I wonder if you need another player to slightly relieve Vitinha, who's maybe a more orthodox defensive midfielder. Now, look, clearly when Luis Enrique came in, he identified probably within about 3 or 4 months that Manuel Ugarte wasn't his cup of tea and he wasn't good enough on the ball for him. But I wonder if to provide an alternative for Vitinha, and because you can't keep asking players to play 65, 66 games, do you get someone who nearer the Ugarte end of the market to rotate for him. So not a like for like. So I don't think you can get like for like for Vitinha. But I think you can get someone who fills that position, who does a slightly more orthodox job of it. So I think they will go out there and be aggressive in the transfer market this summer and just pick up. I don't know if those are the positions they have in mind, but I would imagine that's a reasonable template for these are players who would, of course, it's really easy to look at the first team. I think the first team is perfect. It's not about the first team. It's not about the first 11. It's about the squad that you've got that's going to see you through those 65, 66, 67 games.
Look, as fascinating as it is to project forwards and think, wow, how great can this team become? Let's not lose sight of the demolition of Real Madrid now, because there are questions to be asked. I mean, first of all, Mbappé. If it was billed as Mbappé versus PSG, as you said before we started recording, David, one of those two didn't show up. And I think we know which one that is. But on the wider question, for Real Madrid, they've had a season where they haven't won anything. They've huffed and puffed and not gotten anywhere. How does that reflect what's going to happen for them going forward?
Yeah, I think it just increases pressure even further. This sort of result this early on for Xabi Alonso is quite damning.
Do you think it helps him? Because if he's out there, he's wanted to make his transfers early, clearly wants to make a few more. I think we realised, like probably 2/3 of the way through last season, they needed more of a rebuild than anyone had anticipated. I mean, for him, he comes in when really he should be on holiday to take this tournament, and they've given not a bad performance. I think certainly when they've got the team in the shape that he wanted, they've looked pretty good. I thought they looked decent against Pachuca.
Which made it strange why he changed it for this game.
Well, I guess Trent going out and Huijsen going out, who are two of his new guys, makes the difference. Is this a good way almost of going to the board and going, look, well, we've done what we've done. I need a few more players. It's a convincing case, no?
It's a convincing case. I'm just interested to know who he thinks could come in. And I just think it increases pressure on him. I think the magnifying glass is on him further now. I really, really do. And it cranks it up. A result this bad in most clubs, I would say, yes, it's probably a good way for them to look at it. I just think at Real Madrid, it just cranks up the pressure. And
it's a terrible look.
Yeah, it really is. And look,
it's got to hurt.
He handed over 10 or 12 million to get Trent Alexander-Arnold in for early. Obviously, he didn't play. He had a little slight tweak in training. But there was enough there, I think, to offer a better performance. And, it was never about personnel overly for me under Ancelotti. What needed changing was the structure and the shape and how Real Madrid operated as a unit. We watched them last night, and like we've said, it was a continuation of last season. And there was two guys out there, same as last season for a majority of the time, who were passengers, who were not part of the team, and that's Kylian Mbappé and Vinicius Jr. They do not form part of the team when they lose the ball. You're two players down straight away when you lose the ball. That is you're not going to achieve any success by doing that. So Xabi Alonso's biggest job is not convincing Florentino Perez about signings. It is about finding a system that works with Vinicius Jr. and Kylian Mbappé in, and also Jude Bellingham as well, who seems just doesn't seem, he's not quite the same as he was when he first arrived at Real Madrid, and his position and the way he's playing in this team isn't quite right as well. So there's structural issues that Xabi Alonso has to acknowledge first.
Yeah, the whole shape was horrible. I mean, I think it gives him an excuse to move definitively away from four at the back for a start, which is maybe something he wants to do anyway. But that front three was a mess, and it left Bellingham in the position that he was in too many times last season, where he's this guy trying to plug gaps all over the pitch. And he hasn't really got a defined role when that's the case. It's like, right, okay, you need to do a lot of defensive midfield work because there's no one else to do that. If you could break into the box, that'd be great as well. And yeah, if you could sort of like cover over towards the left when Vinicius doesn't. And the annoying thing is, Vinicius is more than capable of doing defensive work.
He absolutely is,
we've seen it before. And at the moment, whether that's the shape or he's not bought in or whatever the question is, or he's just not at his best, they're not getting that for him. And that's another thing that's impacting negatively on Jude Bellingham?
I would love to talk to you about the midfield, Real Madrid midfield, but we're running out of time. But let me just say, look, I am still a big fan of Arda Güler. Didn't have a great game, and felt like PSG had his number. But I'm looking forward to seeing him becoming the new Luka Modric, because clearly Modric has had his time now. I know he's going to a great team as well, but
they need a new Toni Kroos as well. So if they could just get a new Toni Kroos and a new Luka Modric,
Easy.
I think they might be okay. Yeah, easy. That's it. They're fixed.